Hello there, welcome to this new tutorial. Today we're going to build a translation app with React and a tiny bit of Bootstrap. So we need to enter the text we want to translate, and we're going to need to select the output language we can choose from, and then clicking this button you'll get a response from the translation API. By the way, we don't have to specify the input language because it's going to be automatically identified. This is going to be a sort of first part, so if you're looking for a simple project with this simple functionality, then this is the right place for you. If you're coming for a larger app, then start with this one, and in the next few weeks I'll publish the second part of this project, which is going to be this one, the Translator Plus, like I called it. It has a bunch of cool features like Google Translate, and even more like images, example translations, directly without the hassle of copying and pasting the sentence to translate it, and maybe some other cool things as well. We're going to see how to use a load of useful React features along with some advanced JavaScript aspects. So too many good stuff is awaiting in this and in the next tutorial. Alright, enough of the intro, let's get started. So I have this new project called Translator. Let's create the component folder. We'll say Translator, and it's gonna have a couple files, one for JavaScript and another one for CSS. Alright, now let's create the component structure. So it's gonna be called Translator, like I said. So before we begin, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of this project. We're going to have a couple main boxes, one for the input text and another one for the output. We'll also create a languages list so we can choose the language of the output. So let's get into it. I'm going to use Emmet to quickly set the initial HTML elements we need in our project. So let's first change this to React. So we're going to have a main translator section, and it's going to have a row wrapper, which in turn has a translator container and another class called import lang. And it's going to have a top row and a form with a class called import form. Alright, let's hit tab, and there we go, that's what we get. Now let's take care of the second one. So here I'll say another translator container. This one is going to be for the output, and it's going to have a top row as well, which has a select list and a p tag with a class called text box. Alright, and another class called output text, or actually output box. Okay, so we should have this whole translator div with all of these elements inside it. Now I'm sure if we save we won't get anything. Let's go here and import this one, say translator, save it. Alright, just an empty select list. Okay, so let's work out the first container. So here I'll say I'm gonna have a button with a class btn and btn primary, and another one called btn translate. Now those first couple classes are coming from Bootstrap. Like I said, we're gonna use Bootstrap. Alright, then here we're gonna say translate. Okay, then inside this form, let's just get rid of that. We're gonna have a text area, and we'll just take care of that in CSS. So I'm gonna have a class name called text box, and we're gonna have a placeholder as well. Say enter text in any language. Now let's save it. There we go, that's better. Now let's focus on the output. So here in the select list, we're going to have a languages here, and we're gonna have a class called form select, and form select sn. Again, this is from Bootstrap. Now here we're gonna have 5 different options. Now each option is gonna have a value and the actual HTML text. So I'm just gonna copy the rest of the options so you don't need to watch me typing all of them. Okay, so we're gonna have 5 options, like I said, 5 languages. And then here we're just gonna have a dummy output text. Now for this one, you can maybe create an array or an object, then map through it to render all of these options, or you can also extract them from an API if you want. So let's see what we have now. Alright, a button, text area, a list, and a simple text here. Now we're going to see how to use the translation API. So we'll head on to Rapid API, which is an API hub or marketplace that provides a large set and categories of free and paid APIs. And we're going to use the Microsoft Translator API, the free tier. So if this is your first time using Rapid API, you can create an account, find this API, subscribe to the free plan, get your API key, and you'll be good to go. Now, one of the cool things about this website is that it gives you one single key, which can be used to access all of the APIs existing here. They didn't actually sponsor this video, but I hope they do in the future, because I'm still going to use some of the APIs out there in the upcoming tutorials. So if we take a look at the API docs page, we'll see here at the left side the list of endpoints organized. And in the middle, we have a bunch of details for each endpoint. And lastly, the actual code snippet you need to test things out. So if we test this endpoint, we'll get into the results page. So here we got the detected language, sentence length, and that's not what I want. We're gonna get into the translate endpoint. We want this one. So if we click test, there we go, we got an error. We are gonna need to pass in the languages of translation. So we're gonna say DE for Deutsch. So we're gonna translate that to German. If I click test, this time we get another response. So we got this detected language. Okay, this is the input language. You can see that it detects it automatically. And then in the translations array, we're gonna have a couple of things: the actual translated text and the language of translation. So we're gonna focus on that specific array. All right, so let's just grab this fetch code here, and we'll just go back here. And the first thing I want to do is to handle a click event for this button. Okay, I'll say on click, we're gonna say translate. So we're gonna make a function called translate. So here let's say const equal to, and then here we're gonna paste that fetch code. Okay, now if we try logging the response in our app here, let's say translate. Here we go, got an array, a couple things, the translations array here, and there we go, we can see the text and the language of translation. All right, so here we're gonna say translated text is equal to response of 0, the first item, and we're gonna get into the translations array as well. We're gonna get the first item, and here we're gonna grab the text. All right, now if I save that, translate again, yeah, I'm gonna have to pass this here, say translated text, translate. There we have it. This is what I want to get. So far, so good. Now I can get what I want. Now the next thing I want to do is to hide our credentials. So I'll create a .env file where I'm going to store 3 secret variables: the API key, the base URL, and something else called the for the query parameters as well. So I'll just come here and I'll say and then file. All right, I've already created it, so you just have to create a .env file, and it's going to be empty at first, so there's no big difference. Anyway, now inside this file, we're going to put the following items. So the first one is going to be React app, and we're going to say underscore, and here we're going to say rapid API key. Okay, and this is going to be equal to the actual key. Okay, I'm going to paste it here, and then the second one is going to be for the base URL. So here we'll say base URL. Now this one is actually the this whole URL. So we're going to start from here up until this equal sign. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm going to copy it, and I'll just paste it here. All right, and then the last thing is actually going to be this, the rest of the URL, which is that one. So here we'll say, got some errors. I think we should wrap this in quotes. And I don't think we should do that because it never happened to me. And then the last thing, like I said, is going to be the query params. So this is going to be the last part, the rest of the URL. Okay, and I'm just going to paste it right here. And then I'll just come here, and here instead we're going to say process dot env dot, and I'm just going to grab them like that. I'm going to paste it right here, and then here we're going to say, so we're going to do that with a template string. So we'll say, here we're going to say process dot env dot, and again I'm going to paste the base URL, and then here I'm going to paste the second part, which is these query params. Say process dot env dot this one. All right, now I think this should work fine. If I save that, click translate. All right, we got a problem, got an error, undefined. All right, so when you add some environment variables, you're gonna need to stop your server, save, and restart it again. Otherwise, those variables won't be cached. So you're gonna need to stop the process, rerun it again, restart it again. Okay, and then you can just come here, and we're just gonna refresh, click translate, and there we have it. It's working properly. Cool. All right, now we shouldn't commit those credentials to the repository, so we're gonna need to ignore them. So here we'll say, in this place, we're gonna say .env as well. Okay, this way we don't happen to expose our secrets in the repo. But even though we're doing all of this stuff, a developer can inspect our code in the browser and could see any of those credentials. A better approach is to store it in your backend. Then you can access it with a GET request and do your job. This is safer as far as I know. Now another thing I should have mentioned, make sure you prepend each environment variables with this text. You're gonna need to prepend each variable with React underscore app underscore and then the variable name, because that's how create React app could recognize them. Now let's go ahead and take care of the text area and the languages list so the user can get what he wants. So we're going to create a couple of hooks here. We'll say const input text set input text, and then we're going to say use state, and this is going to be empty. All right, and then the second one is going to be for the output. I'll say output lang. We're going to deal with the language of the output. Set output lang. I'm going to say use state as well. I'm going to set this to AR as the default value. Now let's go ahead and handle the text area. So here I'm going to say on change, we're going to say e, and then we're going to set import text with e.target.value. And then we'll do the same thing with the select list. Output length. So let's try logging the output language. So here I'm going to say console.log output length. Alright, so here we're going to say translate. There we go, now I can see it. Cool. Now let's replace with this testing text with the input text instead. So here I'm just going to wrap all of this in template literals, and we're going to say here instead we're just going to say input text. Okay, what's wrong with that? Alright, the count should be right here, and we're going to have another curly brace as well. So that's the first thing. Now let's do the same thing with the output language. So instead of this one, we're just going to pass in the output link. If I save it, let's just give it a try. We'll say cool, and we're going to say translate, and there we go. We get a response. If I say French, for instance, there we have it. Cool. So now let's render that text in the browser. So that'll be in the output box. So here, what I'm going to say output text. Okay. And then I'm going to create a hook for this one. Say output text, and then here say const and set output text. It's going to be use state, and it should be empty. And then we should set the translated text as the output text, right? If I save that, say nice, there we have it. Cool. All right, that works fine. I think we now have reached the main goal of this tutorial. So let's add some CSS to give it a nicer look. I'm gonna actually bring this from my notes just to save some time. So I'm gonna go to my CSS file here, and I'll paste them. And then here, I just need to import layer.css. Now if I look at it, there you go. We've got some overlapping elements here. I'm gonna need to fix that. I think this should be with the so I guess there's a problem with the output. So this is the top row. Alright, this p tag should be outside of this top row. Alright, that's better. Cool. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning, we're gonna need a bit of bootstrap. So we're gonna need to go to bootstrap, say bootstrap 5 cd, and you're just gonna have to copy this link, and you're gonna need to paste that in our index.html file. So here I'm just gonna paste that, and if I come back here, there we have it. That looks better. Cool. There we go. Alright, cool. So I've got this button and the select list as well. Now if we delete this input, let's say nice, if we delete this input text, we still see the last translated text. We don't want to see that. So if the input text is cleared, we should also clear the output. So we're gonna make a minor change to fix this behavior. So here, so if the output text is empty, then I'm gonna show a span with this last name, output placeholder. Alright? And then here we're gonna say select a language. Otherwise, we're gonna show the output text. if I save it, refresh, there we go. At the beginning, this should be shown like that. So when the output text is going to be empty, well, this will happen on the first render, or when we click a button that's going to clear the input text. So we're going to add a button here, just like that one. So this is going to clear the text here, and eventually the output text, like that. Okay. So underneath the text area here, I'm going to say if the input text is not empty, then we're going to show an icon. So this icon is going to be called AI outline close. This is a React icon, so I'm going to need to install that package. So it's going to have a class name called, let's just check if I installed that package or not. So I didn't. We're going to need to install this package. So I'll say npmi react icons. Alright, while this is getting installed, we're going to need to pass in the class name. It's going to be icon btn and close btn, right? And I'm going to have an on-click handler. So when I click this icon, we're going to need to clear the input. Now let's just import this icon. So here I'm going to say import from React icons / AI. Cool. And then we're going to need to create this function. Now, generally speaking, I don't usually install a whole package for one single icon, but since we're having a second part following this tutorial, we're going to use a bunch of other icons, so that would make sense in my opinion. You can see here, if I type something, we're going to get a bunch of icons. So you can see here 3 icons in this place. Now let's create this function. So I'll just come here and I'll say closed. Here, whenever I click that icon, we're going to need to clear the input and the output as well. Let's just save that and see if I can see the this icon. Say nice, and there we have it. Now I can see it. If it's empty, it gets hidden. Cool. So here we're going to have to reset the input text to empty. And the same thing with the output. Okay. If I save that, nice. If I click this, alright, the output is cleared, but the input doesn't. What's wrong with that? I guess this is something with the text area. It should be the value attribute, so it's going to be the input text. Say cool. There we have it. If I click this, there we go. Cool. Now the last thing I want to do is handling response errors. So when fetch runs and returns the response, we're going to check that response status. If it's successful, we continue, otherwise we return an error message. So right after we get a response, right here, so here what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get rid of that, and I'm going to wrap this in curly braces, and I'm just going to do that. Alright, let's format it. So here, before we turn this response into JSON, we're going to need to check if the response.status is not equal to 200. If that's the case, we're going to need to console log an error message. Let's say there is an error. And then we're going to need to return so we don't get into the next block. So I'll say that. Now these errors could be related to the endpoint, for instance, a wrong route or that kind of stuff, or maybe some trouble in the API. It could be 502. It could be a server error, for instance. So to test this, we'll just make a typo in the in this URL. So I'll say something. Let's add something here. If I save that, let's just inspect. I say nice. There we go. Now we get an error. There is an error. Cool. So we can see that error message. Now it's time to tell the user as well. So I'm going to create a hook to see if the text has been translated or not. So here we'll say const is translated. I'm going to say use state, and this is going to be empty. And now let's handle that in the translation function. So here, so if the response is unsuccessful, we're going to need to set is translated to false. Okay, it's not translated. But if everything is fine, then we can just reset it to true. And if we get a server error, for instance, right here, we're going to do the same thing as well. So here we're going to say set is translated to false as well. All right. Then finally, we're going to take that hook and check when it's false, so we can show the error message to the user. So here in the output, what I'm going to do, if is translated false, I'm going to do that. I'm going to show a span with this class called output placeholder and another class called translation error, and here we're going to say translation failed. Otherwise, we're gonna get into this second part. All right. If I save this and then come here, I'll say nice. There we go. We get this error. It says translation failed. Cool. Now if I clear this, the translation failed error is still here. So let's take care of that. So all we need to do is to come back here, and here we're just going to say set is translated to nothing. Okay. Say cool. This time translate. There we go. This is the error. If I clear, awesome. So let's just remove this and try it again. There we go. Cool. Alright, that's been it. Hope you liked this video. I'll post the second part in the next few days or weeks. See you later.